Our in-depth coverage continues today. The war between Israel and Hamas now into day 6. And this hour we begin with a major development in the effort to get Canadians home. We have new video into us this morning from the airport in Tel Aviv, and we can tell you the first Canadian military plane is now on the ground there. We now know the Canadian airlift will start as early as today. We're hearing from some of the Canadians who've managed to get on commercial flights out of Tel Aviv as well. This woman and her family in Israel for a family wedding, and they tell us they had many anxious days trying to find a flight home.
Mixed feelings because my husband's family are all here and we came for a very, very large and joyful celebration, and we know that we're leaving them behind. And one of our sons was almost paralyzed with anxiety because of the situation and had to be reassured quite constantly.
At last word, about 700 Canadians have asked Canadian officials for help to fly out of the country. Some have arranged their own flights, some private flights out of other parts of Israel. Chris Brown is at the small airport in Haifa in the north of the country, and he's speaking with Canadians there just before they board a private chartered flight out.
In addition to those Canadian government flights, a number of private citizens in Canada, particularly different Jewish groups from the Toronto area, they've organized their own charter flights to get people out before it was clear that the government was going to have these. And they're flying out of the smaller airport here in Haifa. And for many of them, it's fair to say, a very difficult decision. Let's hear from Andrea Moscow. We talked to her. She was here not because she wanted to leave, but because she had to escort her older father back to Canada, who was here on a visit when Hamas attacked. And now, because of that, her husband has been called up, and he's now literally in the front lines in northern Israel. Here's what she told me.
So I can't even breathe. I'm so worried, and I don't want to be in Canada. I want to be here, just being there for my husband and cheering him on and supporting and volunteering. But I need to take my father home, and my son needs security, so we're gonna go home. He is a guard that helps doctors. So in the field, he's protecting the doctors that are there to help the soldiers when they get injured.
How worried are you about what's in store?
I'm beyond worried, shaking every moment, but.
I also spoke to Dave Wallach. He's from Calgary.
Well, it's tough because I have family here. My wife has family here, but I can understand the fear that my kids have and the people have, and that's why we're going back. If it was for me, I would have stayed because this is my 5th rodeo. And
what do you mean by that?
First war, I was 8 years old, the 67 war. 14 years old, 73. 82, I was a soldier and I was in Lebanon. This is number 5. So, you know, I've been here. You can never get used to it. You get scared, but you know, adrenaline also works, that you volunteer, you do work, you help people, you support people.
So for families going back, a very difficult choice to make between staying and helping with this war effort or choosing the safety of being back in Canada, Heather.
Chris, as you report live from Haifa, we watch what's happening in Gaza and the live pictures of the city skyline there. The airstrikes continue, trying to target Hamas leadership, trying to target those tunnels. But we heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, clearly the aim, Chris, to crush Hamas. So what is happening as far as troop buildup and along the border?
There are now roughly 300,000 Israeli soldiers, tanks, armored bulldozers, everything at the border with Gaza ready to go. Military spokespeople said today they are ready, they're prepared, but they are waiting, and they need to wait to get their orders from this new unity cabinet, and they have not received them yet. And that will tell all of us just exactly what the scope of this ground operation will be, what are their goals, and how long will things last for. But meanwhile, as you say, in Gaza, things It really is catastrophic there. We're hearing from the United Nations that some 340,000 people are now displaced internally from their homes. And to put that in perspective, there's only 2 million people in Gaza. So that's an immense number of people that have been affected by this. There is no electricity in Gaza. There's no fuel to run the power plant. And individuals, there's very little fuel for them as well. The hospital, it's running out too. And a spokesman for the Red Cross is saying if there is not something that happens that makes things better, fuel comes in, that hospital there is going to turn into a morgue because they're simply not going to be able to cope with all of the injured people. Israeli authorities have been talking about what they're doing today, and they're stressing that they are hitting targets, military targets. They're not aiming at civilians. They're trying to make the distinction between the tunnels that they say are under Gaza and the buildings that are above. Let's listen to the Israeli military spokesman.
Imagine we're looking at the Gaza Strip, but really think of the Gaza Strip as one layer for the civilians and then another layer for Hamas. And what we're doing now is that we are trying to get to that second layer that Hamas has built.
Egypt also has an opening to the Gaza Strip, a crossing there, but that country's been very reluctant and they're in a tough spot because what they really don't want to do is open the gates, as it were, and then have a massive displacement of people coming into the Sinai Peninsula. Egypt's position is that this has to be sorted out between the Palestinians and the Israelis, but they are trying to get more aid through that lone border crossing into Gaza. In the meantime, everyone is waiting and watching just to see how Israel proceeds. Don't forget there are more than 100 to 150 Israeli and foreign hostages whose lives are at stake in Gaza, and that's going to be a huge decision for how the Israeli government proceeds. Heather.